Eric sat in his favorite chair, staring out the window at the street below. The soft hum of traffic mixed with the gentle ticking of the clock on the wall. It was a familiar sound, one that used to make him feel calm. But tonight, nothing could calm the storm in his mind. His thoughts kept circling around the same problem. Sarah. They had been engaged for almost a year now, and at first, it had been wonderful. They were in love, and the future seemed bright. They talked about everything, how they'd travel the world, buy a house, maybe even start a family. Eric had been so sure that Sarah was the one he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. But lately, things have changed. The arguments had started small but were becoming more frequent, especially about money. Eric worked hard as an architect, saving what he could for their future, but Sarah didn't seem to think about saving at all. She loved to shop, loved the feeling of having new things, shoes, clothes, bags, and whatever else caught her eye. At first, Eric didn't mind. He wanted her to be happy, and he liked spoiling her when he could. But as the months passed, Sarah's spending seemed to grow out of control. It wasn't just small things here and there. It was big purchases, designer clothes, expensive dinners, and last-minute trips to fancy resorts. He had tried talking to her about it. He had explained that they couldn't keep spending like this, that they needed to start thinking about their future. But Sarah always laughed it off. "Eric, you're such a worrier," she would say, brushing off his concerns with a wave of her hand. "We're fine. We have enough money, and we'll figure it out later." But Eric couldn't just ignore the problem. Every month, the bills piled up higher and higher. He had even started hiding some of the credit card statements, afraid that one day they'd spiral into debt and wouldn't be able to climb out. The last argument they had was the worst one yet. Earlier that evening, Sarah had come home with a brand-new handbag, one that Eric knew had cost a small fortune. He tried to keep his voice calm as he asked her, "Sarah, do we really need another bag? We just talked about cutting back." Sarah looked at him with a frown. "Eric, it's just a bag. Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" "We've been over this," Eric replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "We can't keep spending like this. What about saving for a house? What about the wedding? We can't plan for our future if we're drowning in bills." Sarah crossed her arms and sighed, clearly tired of the conversation. "Why do you have to worry about money all the time? We're doing fine. You're acting like we're going broke." "That's not the point, Sarah," Eric said, running a hand through his hair. He was trying so hard to stay calm, but it was difficult when she refused to listen. "We need to think about the long term. You can't just keep buying things without a plan. We have to be responsible." She rolled her eyes, tossing her bag onto the couch. "Eric, you're being dramatic. We're not living in the 1950s anymore. People live differently now." Eric clenched his jaw, feeling the anger rise inside him. It wasn't just about the bag, it was about everything. He felt like they were on two different paths, and the more they argued, the more distant they became. How could they build a life together if they couldn't even agree on how to live day to day? "I'm not trying to control you, Sarah," Eric said, his voice softening. "I'm just trying to make sure we have a future. I love you, and I want us to be okay." Sarah stared at him for a moment, her face softening, but only for a second. Then she shook her head. "You need to relax, Eric. Life is too short to worry so much about money. I'm going out. I'll see you later." And just like that, she grabbed her keys and walked out the door, leaving Eric standing alone in their apartment. The sound of the door closing echoed in the empty space, and Eric felt a deep sadness settle over him. He sat down in the chair by the window, the one he always sat in when he needed to think. But tonight, thinking didn't help. No matter how many times he tried to work through the problem, he couldn't see a solution. Why couldn't Sarah see what he saw? Why didn't she understand how important it was to plan for their future? Eric wasn't trying to stop her from enjoying life. He just wanted them to be smart about it. He wanted them to have something solid to stand on, a life they could build together, not just one filled with things. His phone buzzed on the table. He didn't need to check it to know it was Sarah, probably telling him she'd be home late, like she always did after they argued. He ignored it, his eyes drifting back to the window. The street below was quiet, the lights casting long shadows on the pavement. Usually, the view helped calm him, but not tonight. Tonight, all he could think about was how lost he felt. He needed space. He needed to get away, even if just for a little while. He didn't know where he would go, but he knew he couldn't sit in this apartment any longer, drowning in his thoughts. Eric stood up and grabbed his jacket, shoving his phone into his pocket without checking the messages. He grabbed a small bag and tossed in some clothes, not thinking too much about it. He wasn't sure how long he'd be gone, but he didn't plan to be out too long. He just needed to clear his head. As he stepped out of the apartment and into the cool night air, a sense of relief washed over him. Maybe this was what he needed, a break from everything, a chance to breathe. Eric got into his car and started driving. The city lights faded behind him as he headed out toward the countryside. The roads were quieter here, and the stars were brighter. For a moment, it felt good to be away from the noise of the city, away from the weight of his problems. But even as he drove, his thoughts kept returning to Sarah. How had they gotten here? How had the love they once shared turned into this constant tension? He remembered when they first met, how carefree and fun she had been. He had fallen in love with her laughter, her energy. But now, all they seemed to do was argue. As the road stretched on, Eric's mind wandered further. Maybe they just needed time. Maybe things would get better once the wedding was over, once they settled into married life. Or maybe, his thoughts paused, darkening. Maybe they weren't right for each other anymore. Before he could dwell too long on that painful thought, the road took a sharp turn. Eric wasn't paying attention, lost in his thoughts, and by the time he noticed the curve, it was too late. The tires screeched as he tried to turn, but the car skidded on the gravel. His heart raced, panic rising in his chest. Everything happened too fast. The car spun out of control, crashing into a tree with a sickening thud. And then, there was only darkness. Eric drifted in and out of consciousness. He wasn't sure where he was or how much time had passed. His body felt heavy, almost numb, and there was a deep ringing in his ears. Somewhere in the distance, he thought he heard voices, muffled and unclear, like they were underwater. The world around him was a blur of light and darkness. His mind struggled to piece together what had happened, but everything felt jumbled, like pieces of a puzzle that wouldn't fit. Suddenly, there was a rush of memories, a flash of headlights, the sharp turn, the car spinning out of control. And then the crash. His chest tightened at the thought. The crash. Was he still in the car? Was he hurt? Eric tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. His limbs felt like they were made of lead, and when he tried to open his eyes, they refused. Panic set in. What was going on? Why couldn't he move? Why couldn't he wake up? The voices grew louder, more distinct now, but still unclear. He caught bits and pieces of words. Accident. Critical. Need a stretcher. Through the fog, he realized someone was talking about him. He wasn't in the car anymore. He was being helped. That thought should have brought him comfort, but all Eric could feel was fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what had happened to him. Then, as quickly as the panic came, everything faded again, slipping away like a dream he couldn't hold on to. The voices disappeared, and Eric's mind went dark. The next time Eric woke up, he felt different. His mind was still foggy, but this time he was aware of where he was. The sound of beeping machines filled the room, and the air smelled of antiseptic. Slowly, he opened his eyes, blinking against the bright hospital lights. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through his leg and side, forcing him to stop. He groaned, his voice rough and unfamiliar. It hurts to even breathe. You're awake. The voice was soft, calm, and it came from beside him. Eric turned his head, wincing at the effort, and saw a young nurse standing by his bed. She was holding a clipboard, her expression kind but professional. "Don't try to move too much," she said gently, stepping closer to his bedside. "You were in a car accident. You've been out for a couple of days. But you're in stable condition now." Eric blinked, trying to make sense of her words. "A couple of days," he croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. The nurse nodded. "Yes. You had surgery on your leg, and you've been unconscious since then. But the doctor says you're going to be okay. It's going to take some time to recover, though." Eric tried to process what she was saying, but it all felt too surreal. The accident, the hospital, the surgery, it was like something out of a nightmare. He tried to sit up again, but the pain stopped him. The nurse was quick to place a gentle hand on his shoulder, keeping him from moving too much. "Easy," she said softly. "You don't want to hurt yourself more. Just rest for now." Eric let out a shaky breath, sinking back into the bed. His whole body ached, and his head throbbed with a dull pain. But the worst part was the helplessness. He didn't know what to do, how to feel, or even what to think. I'm Eric," he muttered, his voice hoarse. The nurse smiled gently. "I know. I'm Lily. I've been looking after you since you were brought in." "Lily," Eric repeated, the name settling in his mind like a small anchor in the storm of confusion. How bad is it?" Lily hesitated for a moment, her eyes scanning his face. She seemed to weigh her words carefully before answering. "Your injuries are serious, but you're going to recover. Your leg was broken badly, and you have some bruised ribs. But the doctors are confident that, with time, you'll be back on your feet." Eric nodded slowly, though the news didn't bring much comfort. He felt so far away from himself, like the person lying in this hospital bed wasn't really him. Was there anyone else involved? Eric asked suddenly, his voice filled with worry. Was anyone else hurt? Lily shook her head, her expression softening. "No, it was just you. The accident happened late at night, and luckily, no other cars were on the road. Someone passing by called for help when they saw your car." Eric exhaled, relieved to know that no one else had been hurt. But the relief was quickly replaced by guilt. How could he have let this happen? He should have been paying more attention, should have been more careful. Now, here he was, lying helpless in a hospital bed, unable to do anything but think about how he'd ended up here. Lily seemed to sense his unease. "Try not to think about it too much right now," she said softly. "Accidents happen, and it's not your fault. The most important thing is that you're here, and you're going to be okay." Eric wanted to believe her, but the weight of everything was too much. He didn't just feel broken physically. Something inside him felt broken, too. Lily gave him a gentle smile. "I'll check on you again in a little while. If you need anything, just press the call button, okay?" Eric nodded weakly, and Lily quietly left the room, leaving him alone with his thoughts. The beeping of the machines was the only sound now, steady and constant. He stared at the ceiling, trying to focus on something, anything, other than the pain. He thought about Sarah. Has anyone called her? Did she even know he was here? The thought of Sarah made his chest tighten, but not just because of the accident. Even before all of this, things hadn't been good between them. They'd argued so much in the past few months, mostly about money and her spending habits. He tried to be patient, but every argument left him feeling more and more drained. And now he wasn't sure how he felt. Would Sarah be worried? Would she come rushing to the hospital when she found out? Or would she just send a message, too busy with her own life to really care? Eric closed his eyes, trying to push the thoughts away. He was too tired to think about Sarah, too tired to think about anything. His body ached, his mind felt like it was spinning, and all he wanted to do was escape it all. Sleep came slowly, pulling him under like a wave. And for the first time since the accident, Eric allowed himself to let go, drifting back into the darkness where he didn't have to think or feel. The next morning, when Eric woke up, the pain was still there, but his mind felt clearer. He blinked at the sunlight streaming through the window, feeling more aware of his surroundings. His leg throbbed, and his ribs still ached, but at least he could think straight. A knock on the door brought him out of his thoughts. It was Lily again, her calm presence somehow comforting in the sterile hospital room. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, checking the machines next to his bed. "Sore," Eric admitted, his voice still hoarse. "But better, I guess." Lily smiled. "That's a good sign. The doctor will be by later to check on you, but for now, just take it easy. Recovery takes time." Eric nodded, though the idea of being stuck here for days, maybe weeks, made him feel restless. He hated feeling helpless, hated not knowing what came next. But as Lily moved around the room, taking notes on her clipboard and adjusting his blankets, Eric realized something. It wasn't just the hospital or the pain that bothered him. It was everything. The uncertainty, the questions he didn't have answers to, the feeling that his life had somehow spiraled out of control. And he wasn't sure how to fix it. The days in the hospital passed slowly for Eric. Every morning, he woke up to the rhythmic beeping of the machines and the soft shuffle of nurses moving in and out of the room. He was getting used to the routine, but that didn't make it any easier. His body ached all over. His leg was in a cast, and his ribs still burned with every deep breath. But the worst part wasn't the pain. It was waiting. Waiting for his body to heal, waiting for answers about his life, waiting for some clarity about what came next. His days blended together in a haze of medication, physical therapy, and restless thoughts. The only thing that seemed to break through the fog was Lily. Lily was different from the other nurses. She always smiled when she came into the room, and her presence brought a sense of calm that Eric hadn't realized he needed. She was patient, careful, and seemed to know just when to offer a comforting word and when to give him space. Every day, she would help him with small tasks, adjusting his pillows, bringing him water, or making sure he was comfortable before leaving the room. But it wasn't just the way she did her job that stood out to Eric. It was the way she treated him, like he wasn't just a patient. She saw him as a person. One morning, as Lily came in to check his vitals, Eric found himself studying her more closely. Her dark curls were tied back in a loose bun, and her scrubs were simple and practical, but her eyes were kind. There was something genuine in the way she moved, as if caring for others was just part of who she was. "How are you feeling today?" Lily asked, glancing up from the monitor. "Any better?" Eric sighed, shifting slightly in the bed. "I guess. Still sore, though." Lily nodded, her eyes soft with understanding. "That's to be expected. You've been through a lot. But you're healing. Just try to be patient with yourself." "Patience isn't really my thing," Eric admitted with a half-smile. "I've always been the kind of guy who likes to be in control. Lying here, not being able to do anything, it's driving me crazy."